For more on this, I'm joined by John Bissett, the former Canadian ambassador to Yugoslavia. Hello, welcome to our program.
Hello, good. I'm happy to be here.
In your view, what is the most appropriate way to commemorate this anniversary?
Well, I think the most appropriate way is what's being carried out now in Srebrenica itself. It's an event that will go down in history in Bosnia as a very tragic period, particularly for the Muslims who were living there and for the casualties that were committed there. On the other hand, the other people in Bosnia, the Serbian Bosnians, find it a very controversial subject. There's no dispute that some 8,000 young Muslims were killed in and around Srebrenica, but the issue with the Bosnian Serbs are that most of them were killed when they were fighting their way across Serbian territory to reach the Muslim stronghold of Tuzla. So the question that the Bosnian Serbs raise, of course, at this time is that while 8,000 may have been killed, they were not murdered by Serbian forces. And that controversy will continue, I think, for quite a long time.
Will continue. So given all of that, and given the fact that 17 years has passed, is there much forgiveness, do you think?
No, I don't think there is, really. Perhaps among the younger generation, but those who lived through the civil war in Bosnia, remember, the war was a very brutal war, and there was massacres and atrocities committed on all sides. Of the 190,000 deaths in Bosnia, there was roughly the same percentages of the population. And people forget that many, many Serbs were also killed in Bosnia, as were Croats. Croats killed by Muslims, Croats killed by Serbs, Serbs killed by Muslims, Serbs killed by Croats. So they all have bitter memories about that war. And, you know, from the Bosnian Serbian side, they point out that for years Srebrenica was a UN safe haven, but the Muslim used it to raid Serbian villages in the Drina Valley around Srebrenica and killed over 3,000 Serbian civilians. So when the Serbian forces took Srebrenica, there was strong motives there for revenge to be taken. And those feelings have not disappeared. They're very strong, continuing in Bosnia among the three religious groups: the Roman Catholic Croats, the Orthodox Christian Serbs, and the Muslims.
And so, can we talk about justice? Has everyone been brought to justice that had a hand in what happened?
Well, many have been brought to justice by the Hague Tribunal. The Serbian Bosnians, of course, argue that it's only been the Serbian perpetrators who have been brought to justice. Very few. There have been some Muslim and some Croats, but not in proportion to the casualties that were suffered during the Civil War. So the problem, in a sense, from the Bosnian-Serbian point of view, is that the Western media have always depicted the war there as one of black and white, that the villains were the Serbs and the good guys were the Croats and the Muslims, and they don't accept that, really.
I want to ask you a question, a last question of a more personal nature. When you look back, how has your thought of the story evolved or changed, or has it since that time?
It hasn't changed. I've always said that those who start the war should be held responsible. And in my view, the people that started the war, the government that started the war, was the United States. There was a referendum in Bosnia about independence, and that was defeated. And my neighbor, who was the U.S. ambassador in Belgrade, who lived across the street from me, when an agreement was signed by all three religious groups that there would be peace in Bosnia and no declaration of independence without all three representatives being part of that, my neighbor, the U.S. ambassador Warren Zimmerman, went to Sarajevo and convinced the Muslim leader, Izetbegovic, to declare unilateral independence. And that he did, of course. And that was what started the war, because the 39 or 40% of the Serbian population there refused to accept the idea of living under Muslim law or Sharia law by the Muslim leadership. So the story goes back in history, of course, because those Serbs had been subject of the Islamic Turkish Empire for many centuries and had fought to free themselves from that. They did not want, in the middle of the 20th century, to once again have to live under Muslim rule. And that meant war. And everybody in the Balkans knew that meant war if the Muslims' Declaration of Independence was declared.
John Bissett,
so, you know, who really started the war?
Who really started the war? It has been a pleasure speaking with you. John Bissett, former Canadian ambassador to Yugoslavia. Thank you for your time on this day. We appreciate